Zara pressed her palm against the cool metal surface of the observation deck window. The blue and green marble called Earth spun slowly below her ship, clouds swirling across continents like brushstrokes on canvas. She had studied this world for months from orbit, analyzing data streams and monitoring communications, but tomorrow would mark the beginning of her first direct observation mission. The Galactic Council had chosen her specifically for this assignment. Among the Ketheri, her species was known for their analytical minds and emotional detachment. Perfect traits for studying a species as unpredictable and dangerous as humans. The Council's files painted a picture of a violent, war-torn race that had somehow managed to survive their own destructive tendencies long enough to reach for the stars. Zara's supervisor, Commander Vex, materialized beside her as a holographic projection. His crystalline features reflected the starlight streaming through the observation window. "Agent Zara, your insertion point has been confirmed. You will be placed in the human settlement designated as Portland, in the North American continent. Your cover identity has been established as a foreign exchange student from a remote human colony." She nodded, her silver skin shimmering slightly as neural implants processed the mission parameters. "How long am I expected to remain embedded?" "Standard observation protocol calls for a minimum of 1 Earth year. Your primary objective is to study human social behavior, particularly their capacity for violence and cooperation. The Council needs to determine whether humans pose a threat to galactic stability or if they might be suitable candidates for first contact." Zara had read the reports from other worlds that had encountered humans. Some described them as savage warriors who fought with reckless abandon. Others painted them as compassionate healers who would risk their lives for complete strangers. The contradictions in the data were what made this mission necessary. Her transformation began at dawn. Nanomachines carefully restructured her bone density, muscle mass, and skin pigmentation to match human physiology. The process was uncomfortable but not painful, like having her entire body gently stretched and reshaped. Her natural silver complexion darkened to a warm brown, her height decreased by several inches, and her distinctive Ketheri eye markings faded away completely. The hardest part was suppressing her natural telepathic abilities. Humans were one of the few species in the galaxy that had developed without any form of mental communication, relying instead on crude vocal sounds and primitive written symbols. Zara would have to learn to function like a deaf person trying to navigate a world of sound. Her insertion pod landed in a forested area outside Portland during the pre-dawn hours. The local authorities would later classify it as a meteorite impact, exactly as planned. Zara emerged from the pod's emergency hatch, her human disguise complete, wearing clothing that would help her blend into the local population. The first thing that struck her was the smell. Every world had its unique atmospheric composition, but Earth's air was rich with organic compounds she had never encountered. Pine trees, damp soil, and something else she couldn't identify but found strangely pleasant. Walking through the forest toward the city, Zara marveled at the diversity of life. Her homeworld was beautiful in its own way, but the ecosystems were carefully managed and controlled. Here, chaos seemed to reign. Plants grew wherever they could find purchase, animals moved freely through the underbrush, and everything seemed to be in constant competition for resources. She reached the edge of Portland as the sun was rising, casting long shadows across empty streets. Early morning joggers were beginning to appear, their breath visible in the cool air. Zara activated her universal translator implant and approached a woman stretching against a park bench. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carefully modulated to match local speech patterns. "I'm lost. Could you help me find the university?" The woman looked up with a friendly smile. "Of course. Are you a student there?" "Yes, I'm supposed to start classes today, but my transportation arrangements fell through." Without hesitation, the woman pulled out a small communication device. "I can call you a ride, or if you're not in a hurry, I could drive you there myself after I finish my run." This was Zara's first direct encounter with human altruism, and it immediately challenged her preconceptions. According to the Council's files, humans were suspicious of strangers and unlikely to offer help without expecting something in return. Yet this woman was offering assistance to someone she had never met. "That's very kind of you," Zara replied. "I would appreciate the ride." "I'm Sarah, by the way," the woman said, extending her hand. Zara shook it, noting the firm grip and direct eye contact that seemed to be important in human social interaction. I'm Zara. During the drive to Portland State University, Sarah chatted easily about the city, pointing out landmarks and offering advice about good places to eat and study. She asked where Zara was from, and the prepared cover story about being from a small colony world rolled off her tongue smoothly. What are you studying? Sarah asked as they approached the campus. Anthropology, Zara replied, which was technically true. I'm particularly interested in how different cultures adapt to challenges. That's fascinating. I'm a teacher myself, elementary school. There's something amazing about watching how kids learn to work together, you know? They start out so focused on themselves, but gradually they figure out that they can accomplish more as a group. Zara filed this observation away for her reports. Humans apparently began developing cooperative behaviors at an early age, which suggested it might be an evolved trait rather than something imposed by their social structures. The university campus was buzzing with activity. Students hurried between buildings, their arms full of books and electronic devices. Zara's enhanced hearing picked up fragments of dozens of conversations, creating an overwhelming cacophony of human communication. Her first class was Introduction to Cultural Anthropology, taught by Professor David Chen. As students filed into the lecture hall, Zara noticed the incredible diversity of human appearance. Hair colors ranged from white to black with every shade in between. Skin tones varied dramatically, even among individuals who seemed to come from the same geographic regions. Eye shapes, nose structures, body types, the genetic variation was staggering. Professor Chen began the class by discussing how cultures developed in response to environmental pressures. Zara found herself genuinely interested in his explanations, even though she was technically studying human culture itself. Can anyone give me an example of how environmental challenges might shape cultural values? Professor Chen asked. A young man in the front row raised his hand. Island societies often develop strong community bonds because they have limited resources and need to cooperate to survive. Excellent point, Marcus. And what about societies that face frequent natural disasters? A woman near Zara spoke up. They might develop cultural practices around emergency preparedness and helping neighbors. Professor Chen nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. And this brings us to an interesting question about humanity itself. We've spread across multiple continents, faced ice ages, plagues, wars, and countless other challenges. What cultural traits do you think have helped our species survive? The discussion that followed fascinated Zara. Students talked about human adaptability, the ability to learn from mistakes, and something they called stubborn hope, the tendency to keep trying even when situations seemed hopeless. After class, Zara lingered to speak with Professor Chen. I found today's discussion very thought-provoking. Do you think those survival traits are still relevant in modern society? Professor Chen smiled. Absolutely. Look at how we've responded to global challenges like climate change or pandemics. We don't always get it right the first time, but we keep trying new approaches. We share information across vast distances, coordinate international responses, and often put the needs of future generations ahead of our immediate comfort. This was another contradiction to add to Zara's growing list. The Council's files emphasized human selfishness and short-term thinking, yet here was evidence of exactly the opposite behavior. That evening, Zara walked through downtown Portland, observing human behavior in their natural social environment. She watched people interact in restaurants, shops, and on street corners. What struck her most was the complexity of their social dynamics. She observed an elderly man struggling with heavy grocery bags. Without being asked, a teenage girl stopped to help him carry them to his car. She witnessed a heated argument between two drivers after a minor traffic accident, but noticed how other humans quickly intervened to help resolve the situation peacefully. At a coffee shop, Zara overheard a conversation between two friends. One was describing problems at work while the other listened intently, offering support and advice. The emotional support system seemed to operate automatically, without any formal structure or obligation. Her first day among humans had already challenged many of her assumptions. These beings were far more complex than the Council's reports suggested. They were capable of both remarkable cooperation and destructive conflict, often within the same individual. As Zara made her way back to her assigned dormitory room, she found herself looking forward to tomorrow's observations. For the first time in her career, she was studying a species that genuinely surprised her. The next few weeks fell into a routine of classes, observations, and detailed report compilation. Zara's anthropology studies provided the perfect cover for her questions about human behavior, and she found herself genuinely enjoying the academic environment. She made friends with her dormitory roommate, Lisa, a psychology major from California. Lisa was studying human behavioral patterns from a scientific perspective, which gave Zara access to research she couldn't have gathered on her own. "What's your thesis focus?" Lisa asked one evening as they studied together in their room. "I'm looking at how humans respond to stress and challenges," Zara replied. "Specifically, whether they tend toward individual survival or group cooperation." "Oh, that's classic game theory stuff. You should look into the research on altruistic behavior. It's actually pretty amazing. Humans will often sacrifice their own interests to help others, even strangers." Lisa pulled out several research papers and spread them across her desk. "Look at this study on bystander intervention. When people witness emergencies, the majority will try to help, even if it puts them at risk." Zara studied the data, her analytical mind processing the statistics. The numbers were clear: humans consistently chose to help others at rates that defied logical self-interest. "But why?" Zara asked. "What evolutionary advantage does this behavior provide?" "That's the million-dollar question," Lisa laughed. "Some researchers think it's about group survival. If everyone helps everyone else, the whole group is more likely to survive. Others think it's just hardwired empathy. We literally can't help ourselves from caring about other people's suffering." That weekend, Zara experienced human recreational behavior when Lisa invited her to a party off campus. The gathering was in a small house near the university, filled with students from various academic programs. Zara watched as humans engaged in social bonding rituals that seemed to revolve around shared consumption of fermented beverages, rhythmic movement to musical patterns, and extensive verbal communication. What fascinated her was how barriers between individuals seemed to lower as the evening progressed. She witnessed shy students becoming confident conversationalists, watched strangers become friends over shared interests, and observed how the group naturally included anyone who seemed isolated or uncomfortable. During a quieter moment, Zara found herself in conversation with Marcus, the student from her anthropology class. He was studying engineering and had strong opinions about humanity's future in space exploration. "The thing about humans," he said, gesturing with his drink, "is that we've never been satisfied with good enough. We always want to see what's on the other side of the mountain, or ocean, or solar system." "Don't you think that curiosity could be dangerous?" Zara asked, thinking about the Council's concerns about human expansion into the galaxy. Marcus considered this seriously. "Sure, it could be. But I think our curiosity is balanced by our ability to learn from mistakes. We've had some pretty spectacular failures throughout history, but we usually figure out better ways to do things." "What about war and conflict? Humans have a reputation for violence." "True," Marcus nodded. "But look at the trend over time. We're actually becoming less violent as a species, not more. Better communication, better understanding of consequences, better alternatives to conflict. My grandparents lived through a world war, but my generation can't even imagine something like that happening today." Zara filed this perspective away with the growing collection of data that challenged the Council's assumptions about human nature. As the party wound down, she helped the hosts clean up, noting how automatically humans pitch in to help with group tasks. No one organized the cleanup effort, people simply saw what needed to be done and began doing it. Walking back to the dormitory with Lisa, Zara reflected on the evening's observations. Human social behavior was incredibly sophisticated, involving complex networks of mutual support, shared responsibility, and collective decision-making. "Did you have fun tonight?" Lisa asked. "Yes, I did," Zara replied, realizing it was true. Despite being on a professional mission, she had genuinely enjoyed the social interaction. You know, when you first moved in, I thought you might be really shy or maybe from a really different cultural background. But, you fit in so naturally. Zara felt an unexpected warmth at the compliment. Thank you. Everyone has been very welcoming. That's just how people are, Lisa said simply. Most of us anyway. We like meeting new people, learning about different perspectives. It makes life more interesting. Back in her room that night, Zara compiled her observations into her weekly report to Commander Vex. She found herself struggling to reconcile the humans she was observing with the species described in the Council's files. The humans she met were curious, cooperative, and, remarkably adaptable. They showed consistent patterns of helping behavior, even toward strangers. They formed complex social networks that provided mutual support and shared resources. They demonstrated an ability to learn from mistakes and adapt their behavior based on new information. Most surprisingly, they seemed to genuinely enjoy diversity and novelty. Rather than being threatened by differences, they appeared to be energized by them. Commander Vex's response to her report was skeptical. Agent Zara, your observations are inconsistent with established data about human behavior. Please verify that your emotional dampeners are functioning properly. The implication stung. Ketheri pride themselves on objective analysis, and questioning her emotional control was equivalent to questioning her professional competence. But, as she prepared for sleep that night, Zara wondered if Commander Vex might have a point. Was she becoming too emotionally invested in her subjects? The humans she was studying had begun to feel like friends rather than research subjects. For the first time since beginning the mission, Zara questioned whether her growing fondness for humans might be compromising her objectivity. The thought troubled her more than she wanted to admit. 2 months into her mission, Zara's carefully structured observation routine was disrupted by an unexpected encounter. She was walking across campus after her evening anthropology seminar when she heard raised voices coming from behind the science building. Moving closer to investigate, she found a group of 3 young men surrounding another student. The victim was clutching a backpack protectively while the others demanded he hand over his research materials. Just give us the lab reports, Thompson, one of the aggressors said. You know we need them for tomorrow's exam. The student named Thompson shook his head firmly. I worked all semester on those reports. If you want good grades, do your own work. Zara recognized this as a learning opportunity. How would humans handle interpersonal conflict when authority figures weren't present to intervene? She positioned herself where she could observe without being noticed. One of the aggressors stepped closer to Thompson, using his larger size to intimidate. You're going to give us those reports, or we're going to take them. What happened next surprised Zara completely. Rather than surrendering or fighting back, Thompson stood his ground and spoke calmly. You're better than this, Jake. I've seen you help other students when they're struggling. If you need help understanding the material, I'd be happy to study with you, but I won't just hand over my work. The response seemed to confuse the aggressors. They had clearly expected either submission or conflict, not an offer of cooperation. Before the situation could escalate further, another voice called out from across the courtyard. Hey Thompson. Ready for that study session? A tall young man with dark hair was approaching the group. Zara noticed immediately that his presence changed the dynamics completely. The 3 aggressors stepped back slightly, their aggressive postures relaxing. Hi Alex, Thompson replied, obvious relief in his voice. These guys were just asking about the lab reports. Alex looked at the 3 young men with a steady gaze. Jake, Marcus, David. How's it going? Zara realized that Alex knew all the parties involved, which explained why his arrival had diffused the tension. The aggressors seemed uncomfortable being observed by someone they recognized. We were just talking, Jake said, his earlier aggression completely gone. Thompson's got some good ideas about the coursework. He usually does, Alex agreed. Thompson, want to grab some coffee and go over those practice problems? As the group dispersed, Zara noted that no direct confrontation had occurred. The intervention had been subtle but effective, using social pressure rather than force to resolve the conflict. She was about to return to her dormitory when she noticed Alex approaching her. I saw you watching from over there, he said. Were you worried about Thompson too? Zara felt caught off guard by the direct approach. I heard voices and was curious about what was happening. Smart to stay back unless things got worse, Alex said. Jake's not really a bad guy, just stressed about grades. Sometimes people make poor choices when they're scared. This perspective fascinated Zara. Rather than condemning the aggressive behavior, this human was trying to understand the motivations behind it. I'm Alex Chen, by the way, he continued, extending his hand in the standard human greeting. Zara, she replied, noting that his surname matched her anthropology professor. Are you related to Professor Chun? He's my uncle, Alex smiled. Are you in one of his classes? Introduction to Cultural Anthropology. I'm working on understanding how different societies handle conflict. Perfect timing then, Alex laughed. You just witnessed a classic example of social intervention. Mind if I walk with you? I'm heading back to the dorms anyway. As they walked together, Zara found herself studying Alex carefully. He moved with confident ease, making eye contact with other students they passed and offering friendly greetings. Several people stopped to talk with him, suggesting he was well liked within the campus community. What's your field of study? Zara asked. Theoretical physics with a focus on propulsion systems, Alex replied. I'm particularly interested in how we might travel to other star systems someday. The irony wasn't lost on Zara. Here she was, a being from another star system, talking with a human who dreamed of reaching the stars. Do you think humans are ready for that kind of expansion? She asked. Alex considered the question seriously as they walked. That's a complicated question. Technologically, we're probably still decades away from practical interstellar travel. But, socially? I think we're more ready than people give us credit for. What makes you say that? Look at how we've handled space exploration so far, Alex explained. The International Space Station is a perfect example. Countries that have had conflicts down here work together peacefully up there. When you put humans in challenging environments, they tend to focus on cooperation rather than competition. Zara filed this observation away. It aligned with her own findings about human behavior under stress. Of course, Alex continued, there's always the question of how we'd interact with other intelligent species if we ever found them. What do you think would happen? Zara asked, genuinely curious about his perspective. I'd like to think we'd approach them with curiosity rather than fear, Alex said. Humans are naturally social creatures. We tend to assume that communication and cooperation are possible until proven otherwise. They had reached Zara's dormitory building. She found herself reluctant to end the conversation. Would you like to continue this discussion over coffee sometime? Alex asked, as if reading her thoughts. I'd enjoy that, Zara replied, surprised by how much she meant it. They arranged to meet the following afternoon at a cafe near campus. As Zara made her way to her room, she reflected on the evening's events. She had witnessed human conflict resolution, social intervention, and what appeared to be the beginning of a friendship. More troubling was her personal reaction to Alex. She found his perspectives engaging, his manner of speaking pleasant, and his physical appearance appealing. These were not appropriate responses for an objective scientific observer. That night, she submitted her report about the conflict incident, focusing on the social dynamics and intervention strategies she had observed. She made no mention of Alex beyond his role in defusing the situation. Commander Vex's response was swift and concerned. Agent Zara, your recent reports show increasing anthropomorphization of your subjects. Remember that you are studying a potentially dangerous species. Maintain appropriate emotional distance. The warning troubled Zara, but she found it difficult to think of the humans she'd met as dangerous. Lisa's genuine kindness, Thompson's principled stance, Alex's thoughtful perspectives, these didn't match the profile of a threatening species. The next afternoon, Zara met Alex at the agreed-upon cafe. The establishment was busy with students and professors, creating a comfortable background hum of conversation. Alex had chosen a table near the window, where afternoon sunlight illuminated the papers he had spread across the surface. Mathematical equations covered several pages in neat handwriting. Homework? Zara asked as she sat down. Research project, Alex replied. I'm working on theoretical models for faster-than-light communication. Probably impossible, but interesting to think about. Zara's interest was immediately piqued. FTL communication was standard technology among her people, though the principles might be different from what Alex was theorizing. What approach are you taking? She asked, leaning forward to examine his work. Alex launched into an explanation of quantum entanglement and theoretical particle behavior that demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of physics principles. Zara found herself impressed by the depth of his knowledge, considering that humans had only recently begun to grasp the fundamental concepts involved. The real challenge, Alex explained, is figuring out how to maintain quantum coherence across vast distances. Every model I've run suggests that the entanglement would break down after a few light years. Without thinking, Zara said, what if you used a relay system? Instead of trying to maintain one connection across the full distance, you could create a network of shorter connections that pass information along. Alex stared at her in surprise. That's actually brilliant. I hadn't considered a relay approach. He grabbed a fresh sheet of paper and began sketching diagrams. If each relay could boost and retransmit the signal, you could theoretically span any distance. Watching him work through the implications of her suggestion, Zara realized she had made a significant error. She had provided insight based on knowledge of actual FTL communication technology, information that humans shouldn't possess for decades. Where did that idea come from? Alex asked, looking up from his calculations. I read something similar in a science fiction novel, Zara said quickly. Sometimes fictional concepts inspire real solutions. Alex nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. Some of our best innovations started as science fiction. Writers have been imagining possibilities long before scientists figured out how to make them real. The conversation shifted to other topics, but Zara remained troubled by her slip. She was becoming too comfortable with Alex, allowing her guard to drop in ways that could compromise the mission. Over the following weeks, Zara found herself spending increasing amounts of time with Alex. They studied together in the library, attended campus events, and took long walks through the city. What had begun as anthropological observation had evolved into something that felt very much like friendship. Alex introduced her to his circle of friends, a diverse group of students from various academic disciplines. Zara was struck by how easily she was accepted into their social network. No one questioned her background story or seemed suspicious of her foreign mannerisms. Through these friendships, Zara gained access to a broader range of human social behavior. She observed study groups where students freely shared knowledge, volunteer activities where people donated time to help strangers, and social gatherings that seemed to exist purely for the enjoyment of each other's company. The more time she spent among humans, the more convinced she became that the council's assessment was fundamentally flawed. These were not the violent, selfish beings described in her briefing materials. They were complex, empathetic, and remarkably cooperative. Her growing fondness for human society created an internal conflict that she struggled to resolve. Her duty as a Kethri agent required her to remain objective and report her findings accurately. But her personal experience suggested that humans might actually be ideal candidates for galactic citizenship. The conflict came to a head during what humans called spring break. Alex had invited her to visit his family home in Seattle, where his parents were hosting a gathering of extended family members. Zara saw this as an opportunity to observe human family dynamics and cultural transmission between generations. She accepted the invitation, not anticipating how the experience would affect her personally. Alex's family welcomed her with warmth that seemed completely genuine. His parents asked about her studies and her home planet, which they believed to be a human colony world, with sincere interest. His younger sister immediately claimed Zara as a new friend, eager to show her around the city. During family meals, Zara observed the complex social dynamics that governed human kinship relationships. Multiple generations shared resources, knowledge, and emotional support without formal obligation or reciprocal agreements. Older family members told stories that preserved cultural history, while younger members shared new ideas and perspectives. Most remarkably, when Alex's grandfather suffered a minor medical emergency, the entire extended family mobilized immediately to provide assistance. They coordinated transportation, medical care, and emotional support with efficiency that would have impressed military strategists. "That's just what families do," Alex explained when Zara commented on the response. "When someone you care about needs help, everything else becomes secondary." On their last evening in Seattle, Alex took Zara to a viewpoint overlooking the Puget Sound. The city lights reflected on the water while stars began to appear in the darkening sky. "I've been thinking about our conversations," Alex said, gazing up at the stars. "About humans being ready for space exploration. Meeting you has reinforced my belief that we're prepared for whatever we might find out there." "What do you mean?" Zara asked. "You're from a completely different cultural background, with different perspectives and experiences. But, rather than seeing those differences as threats, I find them fascinating. They help me understand my own culture better." Alex turned to look at her directly. "I think most humans would react the same way. We're curious about differences rather than afraid of them. If we ever do encounter other intelligent species, I believe we'd approach them as potential friends rather than enemies." The earnestness in his voice and the warmth in his eyes created an unexpected emotional response in Zara. For a moment, she found herself wishing she could tell him the truth about who she was and where she came from. What if those other species were very different from humans, she asked carefully. What if they looked different, thought differently, had completely different social structures? Then, we'd have even more to learn from each other, Alex replied without hesitation. Diversity makes everything stronger: ecosystems, societies, even individual relationships. Standing there under the emerging stars, Zara realized that somewhere along the way, her feelings for Alex had evolved beyond friendship into something deeper and more complex. The emotion was unfamiliar and concerning, yet she found herself reluctant to suppress it. When they returned to Portland the next day, Zara submitted a detailed report about human family structures and social support systems. She emphasized the cooperative behaviors she had observed and the apparent absence of the aggressive tendencies described in the Council's files. Commander Vex's response was sharp and immediate. "Agent Zara, you are ordered to report to the command ship for debriefing within 48 hours. Your objectivity has been compromised." The message felt like a physical blow. Zara realized that her growing attachment to human society, and to Alex specifically, had become obvious to her superiors. She faced a choice that would determine not only the outcome of her mission, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and the galactic community. That evening, Alex found her sitting alone in the campus library, staring at an open textbook without reading. "You look troubled," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Want to talk about it?" Zara looked at his concerned face and felt the full weight of her deception. "I might have to leave soon. Family obligations." "How soon?" Alex asked, and she could hear the disappointment in his voice. "Very soon. Maybe tomorrow." Alex was quiet for a long moment. "I know we haven't known each other very long, but I feel like we have a real connection. I was hoping to explore that further." The simple honesty of his words made Zara's chest tighten with emotion she didn't fully understand. "I feel the same way." "Then, stay," Alex said simply. "Whatever family obligations you're dealing with, we can figure out a solution together. That's what people do when they care about each other." Zara realized that Alex was offering her something she had never experienced before: unconditional support from someone who cared about her well-being more than their own convenience. The offer was both beautiful and heartbreaking, since accepting it would require revealing truths that could endanger both of them. "I have to go," she said finally. "But knowing you has changed how I see the world. Thank you for that." As she gathered her books and prepared to leave, Alex caught her hand gently. "If you ever find yourself free from those family obligations, I'll be here," he said. "Take care of yourself, Zara." Walking back to her dormitory room, Zara felt as though she were being torn in two directions. Her duty as a Kethri agent demanded that she return to the command ship and complete her mission. But her heart, a concept she was only beginning to understand, wanted to stay and build a life among these remarkable beings. The next morning, she would have to make a choice that would determine the fate of two species and the course of her own existence. Zara stood before the transportation beacon in the forest where her mission had begun, her finger hovering over the activation switch. One press would signal her extraction pod and end her time among humans forever. Around her, morning birds sang in the trees, creating a symphony that she would never hear again. Commander Vex's orders had been clear: return immediately for debriefing and reassignment. Her mission reports showed signs of compromised objectivity, and the Council needed an agent who could evaluate humans without emotional attachment. But, as she listened to the forest sounds and remembered Alex's face when she said goodbye, Zara realized that her attachment to humans wasn't a failure of objectivity. It was proof of their most remarkable quality, their ability to form genuine connections across cultural boundaries. She lowered her hand without activating the beacon. Instead, Zara opened her personal communicator and composed a message that would change everything. Commander Vex, I am requesting an extension of my mission timeline. My observations have revealed critical information about human social behavior that requires further study. I believe the Council's current assessment of humanity is based on incomplete data. The response came within minutes. Agent Zara, return immediately. That is a direct order. Zara deleted the message without responding and disabled her communicator. For the first time in her life, she was choosing her own path over the dictates of authority. Walking back toward the city, she felt simultaneously terrified and liberated. She had just committed an act that would be considered treason by Ketheri standards, but she felt more clarity of purpose than she had ever experienced. Her decision crystallized as she remembered a conversation with Alex about human history. He had told her about individuals who stood up against unjust systems, people who chose moral courage over institutional loyalty. At the time, she had admired the concept abstractly. Now she understood it personally. Returning to campus, Zara found Alex in the physics laboratory, working on the communication relay system they had discussed. His face lit up when he saw her. "You're back," he said, setting down his instruments. "I thought you had to leave for family obligations." "The situation changed," Zara replied, which was technically true. "I decided that some things are more important than family expectations." Alex studied her face carefully. "Are you sure? You look like someone who just made a life-changing decision." The perceptiveness of his observation surprised her. "How can you tell?" "You have this expression that's part determination and part terror," Alex smiled. "I recognize it because I felt the same way when I decided to pursue theoretical physics instead of the practical engineering career my parents wanted." This parallel between their experiences gave Zara an idea for how to approach her dilemma. Rather than continuing her deception, she could gradually share truth in ways that Alex might be able to accept. "What would you do if you discovered something important that challenged everything your family believed?" she asked. "Depends on whether the discovery was actually true," Alex replied thoughtfully. "If I was certain about my facts, I'd have an obligation to share them, even if it meant disappointing people I cared about." Over the following days, Zara began carefully introducing concepts that would prepare Alex for larger revelations. She shared theoretical discussions about the possibility of other intelligent species, the likelihood of advanced civilizations existing elsewhere in the galaxy, and the potential for peaceful contact between different species. Alex was fascinated by these discussions, approaching each topic with the curiosity and open-mindedness she had come to associate with human intellectual exploration. "Sometimes I wonder if we're being watched," Alex said during one of their evening walks. "It seems statistically unlikely that we're the only intelligent species in the galaxy. If I were an advanced civilization, I'd probably send observers to study developing species before making contact." The comment was so close to her actual situation that Zara almost laughed. "What do you think those observers would conclude about humanity?" "That depends on what they were looking for," Alex replied. "If they focused on our news media, they might think we're violent and chaotic. But if they actually lived among us, they'd see that most humans are cooperative, curious, and surprisingly generous." "You have a lot of faith in human nature." "Evidence-based faith," Alex corrected. "Every day I see people choosing to help instead of harm, to include instead of exclude, to build instead of destroy. Those choices don't make headlines, but they're the reality of human behavior. His assessment aligned perfectly with Zara's own observations, reinforcing her conviction that the council's evaluation of humanity was wrong. That weekend, Alex invited her to attend a local science fair where high school students were presenting their research projects. Zara agreed, curious to observe how humans transmitted knowledge to younger generations. The fair was held in a large gymnasium filled with displays ranging from basic experiments to sophisticated engineering projects. Young humans explained their work to judges, parents, and curious visitors with enthusiasm that reminded Zara of her own species' approach to scientific discovery. At one display, a teenage girl had constructed a working model of a solar power collection system designed to function in space environments. Her presentation was detailed and well-researched, demonstrating a grasp of complex physics principles. What inspired this project? Zara asked. I want to be part of the first generation that establishes permanent human settlements beyond Earth, the girl replied confidently. We'll need efficient power systems that can operate in harsh environments. The ambition was breathtaking. This young human was already planning to extend her species' reach into the galaxy, driven by curiosity and optimism rather than conquest or resource acquisition. At another display, a boy had developed a communication protocol designed to facilitate first contact with non-human intelligences. His approach emphasized mathematical concepts and universal physical constants as a foundation for establishing mutual understanding. Have you considered that other species might have completely different ways of thinking? Zara asked. That's what makes it exciting, the boy replied. Imagine how much we could learn from minds that approach problems differently than we do. The knowledge exchange could accelerate development for everyone involved. Listening to these young humans discuss their dreams for humanity's future, Zara felt a growing sense of urgency. The council needed to understand what humanity could become, not just what they had been in their violent past. That evening, she made a decision that would irrevocably change her relationship with Alex. I need to tell you something important, she said as they sat together in her dormitory room. Something that will sound impossible, but I need you to trust me long enough to hear the full explanation. Alex set down the textbook he had been reading and gave her his complete attention. I'm listening. Zara took a deep breath. I'm not from a human colony world. I'm not human at all. Alex's expression shifted to concern. Zara, are you feeling all right? I know how it sounds, she continued quickly. But I'm a member of a species called the Ketheri. I was sent here to observe human behavior and report back to a galactic council that's trying to decide whether humans are ready for contact with other intelligent species. The silence that followed stretched long enough for Zara to wonder if she had just destroyed any chance of Alex believing her. Finally, Alex spoke carefully. If that were true, it would explain some things about you that I've wondered about. What do you mean? Your insights into physics problems that should be beyond current human knowledge. The way you sometimes phrase things as if you're translating from another language. Your fascination with human behavior that seems to go beyond academic curiosity. Zara felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. You believe me? I'm not sure yet, Alex admitted. But I'm willing to listen to more evidence. Zara activated her personal shield generator, causing a faint shimmer to appear around her body. Then, she allowed her natural skin coloration to show through her human disguise, revealing the silver hue that marked her as Ketheri. Alex stared in wonder, reaching out tentatively to touch the energy field surrounding her. This is incredible, he whispered. You're really not human. I'm really not human, Zara confirmed, deactivating the disguise technologies. And there are others like you? Many others. An entire galactic community that Earth doesn't know about yet. Alex was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. When he finally spoke, his questions surprised Zara with their focus. What have you told them about us? What do they think of humanity? That's the problem, Zara explained. The official assessment is that humans are too violent and unpredictable for galactic citizenship. My mission was to gather evidence supporting that conclusion. But, your reports haven't supported it? My reports have consistently contradicted the official assessment. I've documented cooperation, empathy, curiosity, and adaptability. But my superiors think I'd become too emotionally attached to properly evaluate your species. Alex considered this information seriously. Have you become too emotionally attached? The directness of his question caught Zara off guard. Yes. Especially to you. Good, Alex said simply. Because I've become emotionally attached to you too. The conversation that followed lasted through the night. Alex asked detailed questions about HFY society, galactic politics, and the technological differences between their species. Zara shared everything she could, relieved to finally be honest about her identity and mission. As dawn approached, Alex made a suggestion that would reshape both their futures. What if you arranged for me to meet with your superiors? As a representative of humanity, I could present our perspective directly. That would be extremely dangerous, Zara warned. The Council doesn't have much patience for species they consider primitive. But, you said your reports have been questioning their assessment. Maybe they need to hear from an actual human to understand what they're missing. The boldness of the proposal was typically human, Zara realized. Where her species would spend months analyzing potential risks and outcomes, Alex was ready to take direct action to achieve a positive result. I would need to re-establish contact with my command ship, Zara said slowly. And I would probably face severe consequences for disobeying orders. What kind of consequences? At minimum, exile from HFY society. Possibly imprisonment or memory modification. Alex took her hand gently. Would it be worth the risk if we could convince them that humans deserve a chance at galactic citizenship? Looking into his eyes, Zara realized that her feelings for Alex had evolved beyond what the HFY understood as friendship or partnership. She was experiencing something her species had no name for but humans called love. Yes, she said. It would be worth the risk. Later that morning, Zara reactivated her communicator and sent a message that would determine the fate of two species. Commander Vex, I am prepared to return for debriefing. However, I am requesting permission to bring a human representative who can provide perspective on their species' potential for galactic citizenship. The response was immediate and harsh. Agent Zara, you have violated direct orders and compromised your mission. Return immediately for disciplinary action. Bring no one. Zara deleted the message and sent another. I am invoking Article 7 of the Observer Protocols, which allows for the presentation of contradictory evidence when an agent believes the initial assessment may be flawed. Article 7 hadn't been used in over a century, but it was technically still valid. The long silence that followed suggested that Commander Vex was consulting with higher authorities about how to respond. When the reply finally came, it was from a different source entirely. Agent Zara, this is Council Administrator Thane. Your invocation of Article 7 has been noted. You are authorized to bring one representative of the subject species for evaluation. Transport will arrive at your location in 72 hours. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and emotional intensity. Alex approached the upcoming meeting with the same methodical thoroughness he applied to his scientific research, studying everything Zara could tell him about HFY culture and galactic politics. Remember, Zara coached him, they value logical argument over emotional appeal. Present facts and evidence rather than philosophy or ideals. But humanity's greatest strength is our ideals, Alex argued. Our ability to work toward goals that benefit everyone, not just ourselves. Then, present that as a practical advantage. Show them how human cooperation leads to better outcomes than competition. On their final evening before transport, Alex made a request that initially confused Zara. I want to make a recording to send to my family, he said. In case something goes wrong and I don't make it back. Nothing will go wrong, Zara assured him. Probably not, Alex agreed. But, if it does, I want them to understand why I chose to do this. And, I want to tell them about you. As Zara watched Alex record his message, talking about his love for humanity and his hope for their future among the stars, she realized that he was demonstrating exactly the kind of courage and selflessness that made humans remarkable. The transport arrived precisely on schedule, materializing in the forest clearing as a shimmering sphere of energy. Zara felt her nervous system responding to the familiar technology, while Alex stared in wonder at his first glimpse of truly advanced engineering. "Ready?" Zara asked as they approached the transport field. "As ready as anyone can be for a meeting that might determine the future of their entire species," Alex replied with a smile that was only slightly forced. Hand in hand, they stepped into the energy field and vanished from Earth, beginning a journey that would test everything they believed about love, loyalty, and the possibility of understanding across the vast differences between species. The command ship was exactly as Zara remembered it: sterile, efficient, and designed to intimidate visitors with displays of technological superiority. Alex's reaction was not what she had expected. "It's beautiful," he said, looking around the transport bay with genuine admiration. "The engineering principles behind this must be incredible." Even facing the unknown, his first response was curiosity rather than fear. Zara felt a surge of pride in his reaction and hope for the outcome of their mission. Commander Vex met them at the transport platform, his crystalline features reflecting his disapproval of the entire situation. "Agent Zara, you are in violation of multiple protocols. This human should not be here." "Council Administrator Thane authorized the transport," Zara replied firmly. "We are operating under Article 7 provisions." "You are operating under the delusion that you understand policy better than your superiors," Commander Vex snapped. "This human will be questioned and returned to his planet with modified memories." "Actually," Alex interjected calmly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about why we're here." Both Kethri turned to look at him in surprise. Few species had the audacity to interrupt council representatives. "We're not here to ask for permission," Alex continued. "We're here to offer partnership. Humanity has capabilities that could benefit the entire galactic community, and we'd like to discuss how we might contribute." The boldness of Alex's approach clearly caught Commander Vex off guard. Kethri culture emphasized deference to authority, and Alex's confident equality was outside their social framework. "You will speak when spoken to," Commander Vex said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Actually," Zara said, finding her own courage reinforced by Alex's example, "under Article 7, the representative species has the right to present their case fully and without interruption." The formal hearing took place in the council's main chamber, a vast space designed to make petitioners feel small and insignificant. Holographic displays showed statistical data about humanity's history, wars, environmental destruction, social inequality, and technological dangers. Alex studied the displays calmly, then looked up at the assembled council members. "Your data is accurate but incomplete," he began. "You focused on humanity's problems without examining our solutions. Yes, we've had wars, but we've also created international laws and organizations dedicated to preventing them. Yes, we've damaged our environment, but we're actively working to repair that damage. Yes, we have social inequality, but we're constantly expanding our definitions of equality and justice." Council Administrator Thane leaned forward in his seat. "These are minor corrections to fundamental flaws in human nature." "With respect," Alex replied, "I think they represent the most important aspect of human nature. We have the ability to recognize our mistakes and actively work to correct them. That's not a flaw to be overcome, it's an advantage to be valued." "Explain," Administrator Thane commanded. Alex activated a small device he had brought from Earth, projecting holographic images that complemented his presentation. "Every major advance in human civilization has come from our willingness to challenge existing assumptions and try new approaches. We've eliminated diseases, reduced poverty, expanded literacy, and developed technologies that benefit everyone, not just elites." The images showed human achievements, medical advances, space exploration, international cooperation, and technological innovation. "More importantly," Alex continued, "we've learned to include rather than exclude. Our societies have become more tolerant, more cooperative, and more focused on mutual benefit rather than competition." Administrator Thane studied the data Alex had presented. "These are recent developments in your species' history. What guarantee do we have that these trends will continue?" "The same guarantee you have that any species will continue to develop positively," Alex replied. "The evidence of our past growth and our demonstrated commitment to improvement." "Agent Zara," Administrator Thane addressed her directly. You have observed human behavior for an extended period. Do you agree with this assessment? Zara stood, knowing that her next words would determine not only Alex's fate but her own. Administrator Thane, I believe the Council's evaluation of humanity has been based on incomplete information. Humans are not perfect, but they possess qualities that would make them valuable members of the galactic community. They are adaptable, curious, and remarkably capable of cooperation across cultural differences. You have become emotionally compromised, Commander Vex interjected. Your testimony is not objective. My testimony is informed by direct experience, Zara replied. If emotional engagement with subjects makes observation invalid, then, perhaps our entire evaluation methodology is flawed. The statement sent ripples of shock through the assembled council members. Cathari culture was built on emotional detachment and analytical objectivity. Alex stepped forward again. If I may, Administrator Thane, I think Agent Zara has identified something important about the evaluation process. Proceed, the administrator said carefully. True understanding requires engagement, not just observation. Agent Zara has learned more about human nature by participating in our society than any detached observer could discover. Her emotional connection doesn't compromise her analysis, it enables deeper insight. Administrator Thane was quiet for several long minutes, studying both Alex and Zara carefully. This approach you suggest, he finally said, would require fundamental changes to our evaluation protocols. Maybe those changes are necessary, Alex suggested. If you want to understand other species well enough to work with them, you need to be willing to connect with them personally. The final decision came after hours of deliberation among the council members. Alex and Zara waited together in a holding chamber, watching the stars through a viewport and discussing their hopes for the outcome. Whatever happens, Alex said, I'm glad we tried. Even if they decide against humanity? Zara asked. Even then. Some things are worth doing regardless of the outcome. When they were finally called back to the council chamber, Administrator Thane delivered the verdict that would shape the future of human galactic relations. The Council has decided to establish formal first contact protocols with humanity, he announced. Agent Zara will be reassigned as humanity's first galactic liaison, responsible for facilitating the transition to galactic citizenship. The relief and joy that flooded through Zara was so intense that her emotional dampeners completely failed, allowing her feelings to show clearly on her features. However, Administrator Thane continued, this assignment will require Agent Zara to take permanent residence on Earth. Cathari who work closely with other species rarely maintain their objectivity sufficiently to return to our society. The implication was clear, accepting the assignment would mean permanent exile from her own people. Zara looked at Alex, seeing the concern and hope in his eyes, then, back at Administrator Thane. I accept the assignment, she said without hesitation. As they prepared to return to Earth, Alex asked the question that had been on his mind throughout the entire experience. What happens now? Between us, I mean. Zara considered the question seriously. I don't know. Cathari don't typically form the kind of emotional bonds that humans call love. This is uncharted territory for me. For me too, Alex admitted. I've never fallen in love with someone from another species. But, you're willing to explore the possibilities? Alex smiled, the expression warm and genuine. Zara, I'd be honored to explore those possibilities with you. Who knows? Maybe we'll be the first example of successful human-Cathari cooperation. 6 months later, as Zara prepared for humanity's formal introduction to the galactic community, she reflected on how much her life had changed since that first day in Portland. She was no longer a detached observer studying an alien species, she had become part of the very society she had once examined from a distance. The first human ambassadors were already in training, preparing for their roles in galactic politics. The knowledge exchange had begun, with human insights into cooperation and adaptation proving valuable to species throughout the galaxy. Most remarkably, other Council species were beginning to request embedded observation missions similar to Zara's, seeking the deeper understanding that came from genuine engagement rather than detached analysis. Standing beside Alex as they watched the first official contact ceremony, Zara realized that her mission had succeeded in ways she never could have anticipated. She had not only proven humanity's worthiness for galactic citizenship, she had demonstrated a new model for interspecies understanding based on connection rather than separation. Any regrets? Alex asked quietly as human and galactic representatives exchanged formal greetings. Zara took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers, and smiled. None, she said. I was dispatched to observe humans. Instead, I learned what it means to become one. As the ceremony continued around them, Zara and Alex stood together, representatives of two species who had found in each other something neither had expected, a love that transcended the boundaries between worlds and the possibility of a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared. The galaxy had gained not just a new member species, but a new understanding of what cooperation across cultural boundaries could achieve. And two beings who had started as observer and subject had become partners in building a bridge between the stars.